Well, good morning, YouTube. I haven't recorded much in the last couple of days, so I thought I probably oughta. So I'm down by the creek, which is one of my most favorite spots in the world here. The creek runs right through our backyard. Just the sound of the water running over the rocks. Good place for me to come and think and reflect and just kind of get some inner peace, so to speak. To start with, did anybody watch Bob and Tam's Excellent Adventures in the last couple of days? They had a video out. It was really good. It was rider tips, things to help avoid an accident. And he had some very good, valid tips on there. But there were a couple that I felt maybe he forgot. Now, being in the motorcycle industry almost all my life, I've had the opportunity to help teach a lot of riders. And I've also had the opportunity to learn from a lot of riders. So I'd like to add a couple things to what he said. Now, most of his tips were really good tips, but there's two important ones that I think should be added to it. One is your eyes. Remember, your eyes will tell that motorcycle where to go. I learned a saying from a friend of mine named RJ years and years and years ago. The saying is, always look where you want to go, never look where you want to crash. I know that sounds crazy, but you got to think about it, because what happens is people see things happen on the road, they focus on it, and before you know it, they're there. Short story. Back in the days, there was a group of people that had like what we called a t-shirt club. They weren't like a real motorcycle club, but they were called the Orlando East Side Riders. Mostly sport bikers. There was probably 20 or 30 people in the club. A lot of them were very inexperienced riders, although some of them thought they were really good riders. We serviced a lot of their motorcycles, but on occasion I'd go out and ride with them. I did it once or twice. It wasn't very often. So the very first time I went on a long ride with them, we're out someplace in like Marion County, Florida. Nice country road through the middle of nowhere, just a couple little farms on it. And the road was pretty much straight. And then it had one 90-degree right turn. And then like, an eighth of a mile past that, a 90-degree left turn. And these were those turns that, in a car, they tell you to slow down to 15 or 20 mile an hour. Obviously on a motorcycle, especially sport bikes, you can take them considerably faster. Now, whenever I ride with a group that I'm not familiar with, I tend to ride in the back. I like to watch and observe what other people are doing, and I don't want to get caught up in any shenanigans that I don't want to be a part of. So anyway, going down the road, we get through the first right-hand turn. So we're coming up to that left-hand turn. I see the rider, 3 riders in front of me, fail to make it through that left-hand turn. So they realized they were going too fast for the turn, which they actually weren't. They were just going too fast for their capabilities in that turn. And they decided to stand the bike up and ride it straight off the road, through a fence, and into a field. Well, sure enough, the rider right behind them, watching that rider crash, did the same exact thing. And then a rider right behind them panicked and did the same exact thing. I get to the turn, I focus on my exit, I lean my bike into the corner, I roll into the throttle, shoot through the corner. On the straightaway, I slowed down, I turned my bike around and went back to check on everybody. So always look for your exit, your eyes. If you're looking at where you want to go, 9 times out of 10, as long as your skill level is there, that's where your motorcycle will go. All right, so in addition to that, I think one of the absolute most important things is rider awareness. And this is something that Bob didn't mention. He talked about a lot of things about maintenance in your motorcycle and making sure that everything is tight, which is all important, don't get me wrong. But rider awareness. Now, I'm going to say this, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but there's been a lot of times I've seen accidents happen in this industry. And a lot of times the rider go, wasn't my fault. There was nothing I could do. The car just came out of nowhere. Well, in reality, it's very rare that a car comes out of nowhere. The car was somewhere. It had to have been. So If you're on your motorcycle and you're riding, you have to know what's going on around you. So when a car runs a red light or a stop sign and hits you, I'm going to sound like a jerk here, it's your fault. Yeah, I know by law, it would be the other person's fault. But if you're watching that intersection as you're approaching it, you're looking at whether cars are stopped or cars are still moving. You've got to judge the speed of the cars that are coming to that intersection. There's a lot of information going on that you got to pay attention to. If you fail to pay attention to your surroundings and it causes you to get hit by another vehicle, in my mind, that's your fault. Now, I say this, I've been riding for almost 30 years, actually over 30 years now. Sometimes I forget how old I am. To this day, I have yet to be involved in an accident with another vehicle. Now, hopefully I don't taboo myself there, but I've crashed, don't get me wrong. But every single crash I've had has absolutely been my fault, and I can admit that. It's always been me goofing off, doing something silly, pushing an envelope that maybe I pushed a little too far, but I've never been hit by another vehicle. I have never hit another vehicle. Now, I've had some really, really close calls, but because I pay attention to what's going on, you can usually anticipate some of these situations just before they happen. Perfect example was riding home from West Virginia the other day. I was on a 4-lane divided highway back road coming through Virginia, and I was in the left lane. I had just passed the car that was in the right lane. I was cruising probably around 65 mile an hour, maybe 70-ish. And coming across traffic, there were 2 vehicles that pulled out of a parking lot. They got to the center median. One of them had plenty of time to get out in front of me, and they did. The other one did not have time. He waited until I was probably 100 feet from him at 60 mile an hour, 65 mile an hour, whatever, and pulled out right straight in front of me. But because I was paying attention to my surroundings, I knew that I'd already cleared that car because I saw that car in my mirror, the one that was on my right. I was able to swerve to the right lane and pass the car while laying on my horn and giving the guy the finger. But it was very close. There was no stopping room. Had my choice been to brake, I would have probably hit him. There was not enough room to bring that motorcycle to a stop in the space allotted. And I have found that in many, many cases, riders choose to use their brakes when their brakes are their worst enemy. In certain situations, I'm not saying brakes are always your worst enemy, but there are certain situations that hitting your brakes is not the right answer. Another saying we used to have, when in doubt, throttle out. You have more control over your motorcycle typically when you're on the throttle than you do when you're on your brakes. Anyway, that's some advanced rider stuff there. I'm not going to get into big details, but focus on your exit. Watch where you want to go and pay attention to your surroundings. Don't be a victim because you weren't paying attention. Well, and so you guys know that we didn't make it to Laconia. So I'm home at a time when I'm not normally scheduled to be home. And I decided to go ahead and take advantage of this opportunity and try to get some projects done around here that desperately need to be done. One of the big problems I have with running a motorcycle business that travels around the country to the rallies and running a trucking company that travels around the country is my projects at home, sometimes they tend to go unfinished. So we would have been gone for Laconia for almost 2 weeks. So that gives me 2 weeks home. We're almost a week into it already. I got some things accomplished, not enough, but I've got a lot more to get done. So just try to get them done. I'll show you some of the things I'm working on. All right, guys, I know I said I hadn't recorded a lot since I've been home from West Virginia. It's been a few days. When did I get home? Sunday. Today is Thursday morning. So yeah, the last 4 days, I really didn't record much, but I've been trying to get a lot of stuff done around here. So one of my trucks is my Excursion. We had an issue with it back in February when we were down in Atlanta. It sprung a coolant leak, and we were able to milk it home by adding coolant or water to it just to try to get it home. But it's also got a collapsed brake line. For years, the braking on it just hasn't been what I hoped it would be. And then when we were down in Atlanta, it got severely worse. When you hit the brakes really hard, it would veer to one side or the other, which is done for a long time. And I never really linked it to the brake line being a problem. I thought it was just a caliper that was sticking or something. And I've taken it apart, moved the calipers, everything good. But we noticed then there were times where I'd have to brake hard because of Atlanta traffic. And then when I went to go again, you could feel that one of the brakes was still dragging and it wouldn't fully release, and it would take a while. Then it would finally release and it would drive fine. But when you hit the brake hard again, same thing would happen. So that's all the telltale signs of a collapsed brake line. So I have already ordered a completely new steel braided brake line kit for it. So we're just gonna replace all of them. This truck is 21 years old, so it needs it. It's got the 7.3 POWERSTROKE in it. It runs like a top. So we get the brakes fixed, we get the coolant fixed, and I can start driving this thing again, because it's been parked since February. And I hate leaving it sit that long. All right, so some of you that are more familiar with us know that this trailer right here behind me is the trailer that we used to use for vending before we bought Goliath, and we towed it with that Excursion until we bought the dually. We don't use any of these for the road anymore now that we have Goliath and the big trailer. So Talon has actually been living in that trailer on our property for the last year and a half or so. But now that he has moved his girlfriend up from Florida, she has a nicer camper. And so there it is, the back of the fifth wheel. So it's a much nicer area for them to live in. So we did some shuffling around because that other trailer was over here, and got this all set up for them to live in. But Talon getting that trailer back from Florida wasn't an easy task. He got up to the Atlanta area. He was in South Atlanta, and the dually started to overheat. And as you know, 6.0s, when you overheat them, you usually have problems afterwards. Luckily, he was paying attention and he didn't hurt the truck. But let me show you what's going on. I started a project. I didn't record the beginning, but I think we're going to go ahead and try to record the end of it. All right. So if you guys don't know what this is the electric fan clutch for the 6-liter POWERSTROKE engine. It actually bolts to the fan assembly, which is kind of sitting back in here. And I got parts stacked up. And it clips into the top of this fan shroud, and the wire runs up in front. So what happened was, when Talon was in Florida, there was a problem with the air conditioning compressor on the truck. And we didn't record any of that. It was, we were in Florida. We were trying to get it done really quick. So basically the air conditioning compressor had completely frozen up, which destroyed the belt, because then the belt was just sliding on the pulley rather than rotating on it. So we had to take half of the front of the truck apart to get that air conditioning compressor out of there. So to make a long story short, in the process of getting the air conditioning compressor out of there, I guess Talon accidentally broke the clip that actually holds that wire to the top of the fan shroud. And at the time, we didn't think anything of it. We got it put back in there. It felt like it was secure enough, but apparently it wasn't. So when he started to get towards the Atlanta area, I guess somehow the fan blades had actually sucked that wire in, and the fan cut the wires. So without the wires hooked up, the fan clutch will not engage when the temperature starts to get warm. The computer monitors all that stuff, and it tells that fan when to turn on and when not to turn on. So he started having overheating problems. Like I said, he was paying attention, so he got the truck off the side of the road, let it cool down, and then he just kind of milked it home. All right, guys, sorry for the interruption there. As I was recording, you might have seen the kids come up in the background. Anyway, they're out of here now. They're off to go visit Grandma for lunch. So anyway, try to remember where I was. Luckily, Talon had noticed that it was overheating. He pulled it off to the side of the road, let it cool down, and at that point, he just milked it. Now, it took him a long time to make it through Atlanta. Traffic's always bad there. It's always hot there this time of year. And but he had to slow it down to about 40 miles an hour to get through Atlanta. And then once he got through Atlanta, I guess he was able to increase the speed to about 50 and just kept an eye on the temperature. And I guess that was just enough airflow coming through the grill that it kept it happy most of the time until he got to some of the bigger hills. And he still had to pull over a couple more times after that. But anyway, he made it home without grenading the engine, luckily. So, we found the broken wires and decided to fix it. So I didn't think to start recording when I started this project yesterday, but basically what I've done is I have pulled out the air box all the way up to the intake boot there that goes into the turbo. Had to loosen the radiator just so you can wiggle it, and I pulled this wire out just to give me a little bit of room here. Take out the fan shroud assemblies, and then you can get to the fan clutch, which bolts on right down here, and take it all off. The other thing I did, I had to disconnect the radiator hose to get the fan clutch out, so I drained just a little bit of coolant out, not a lot, really just enough coolant so that when I took that top radiator hose off, we didn't spill it all over the ground. One, I don't like to pollute stuff like that, and coolant is expensive. Didn't want to waste it, and it's perfectly good coolant, so I intend to put it back in. So my first thought was just to repair this. I mean, the wires are there. You can see where the wires here are broken, and technically I could make this work again, but with this clip being broken, and see if I can lay this out here with one hand. This is supposed to be, well, it's kind of hard to do. It's supposed to be kind of like that, and the plug goes this way, and it runs through this channel, comes down in front of the radiator, and hooks into this, like so. And that repair would have been relatively inexpensive, you know, a little bit of solder, a little bit of heat shrink, some electrical tape. I could have fixed it. The problem is it still wouldn't have secured that clip properly. So my fear was that it would just inevitably happen again. So yeah, $5 repair compared to almost a $500 fan clutch. I decided to go fan clutch. Now, luckily, I've got an account with a local Ford dealer because I buy a decent amount of stuff through them because I own so many Fords. And, you know, I own a business, so they can hook me up a little bit. So I actually only ended up paying about $400 for it. And, but, you know, in the long run, it's the right thing to do. I don't want this to happen again. If it happens when we're towing again in a really hot situation, you know, it's not worth blowing up a motor to save a couple $100. So, anyway, we're going to just replace it. I went ahead and ordered the part yesterday from the Ford dealer. They did not have it in stock. However, they called me this morning and said, hey, it's here. Come on in and get it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump on the motorcycle, run up and get the part. When I come back, we'll put it all together. You know, the last couple of days, we also got some yard work done. Had to cut the grass here. Had to run up to Peachtree where we park all the trucks. Had to take care of the lawn there as well. And there's still a lot of work to do around here. Oh, also my shop. It was an absolute mess. I hadn't cleaned it in months. And I hate to say it, but when anybody else uses my shop, i.e. my children, they tend to not put things back where it belongs, and they clutter the benches. And then I come in to do a project and I get frustrated because I can't find what I need, or everything's already a mess, and then I add to the mess. So before I started these projects, I spent probably the better part of a day and a half just cleaning my shop so that it wasn't so cluttered and nasty. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and jump on the motorcycle, run up to the Ford dealer and grab my part so I can get this truck back together and show you something else I got. Every intention of telling you guys that I bought a mount for the motorcycle, and I was going to mount it and record my trip to the Ford dealer. And then I realized something while I was recording this. So I went to Walmart and I found this. Comes with all kinds of stuff. It was only like 20 bucks. They have a section there with all kinds of GoPro parts and whatnot, and mounting kits. And like the suction cup thing for a GoPro was like $40. The little helmet mount thing for a GoPro was like another $20. Then like the little stand for it was like another $19. And you added it all up, you spend like $100 easily on just a few items to be able to mount a GoPro places. And this whole kit was only $20. No, it's not GoPro brand, but you know, we're talking cheap plastic. Hopefully it'll work. Figure for 20 bucks, that's worth a try. So I was gonna take a few minutes and mount one of these, or find a way to mount one of these to the Harley so that I can run up to the Ford dealer. But I realized that I'm recording with my phone, not my GoPro, and my GoPro is inside and the battery's dead on it. So I guess we're not gonna do that right now, but we'll figure that out later. So let me get to that Ford dealer and we'll go from there. All right, guys, I made it up to the Jackie Jones Ford dealer. I got my part. Pretty quick and easy. It's only about 15 minutes away from the house. I'm gonna throw this back in the saddlebag and head back out. So there you can see my broken pieces. And then right here is what the new one should look like. All right, guys, the next couple of steps are gonna be virtually impossible for me to film because I don't have a good way of setting the camera up so you can see it. But what I have to do is I've got to take that inner fan shroud and hold it down there in place and then slide the fan clutch back in after I attach the fan to it and thread that on while holding the other piece and holding the fan clutch. So it really takes like 4 hands. So you're not really be able to see it a whole lot. The thing is, in order to tighten the fan clutch up, that inner fan shroud has got to be loose because you have to get the fan tool back behind it to tighten it, and then you can bolt that in. It just, like I said, need too many hands and don't have the ability to do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the fan transferred over to the new clutch, and then we'll go ahead and do that installation. Okay guys, I have re-inspected the fan to make sure that no damage occurred to it in the process. And before I bolt it on, I'm gonna take and put a dab of blue Loctite on all of these bolts. Not a lot, but one thing I did notice is that when I was taking this apart yesterday, none of these screws were tight. They weren't like loose falling out, but it took 0 effort to break them loose. There wasn't that crack. So I'm imagining it's just a matter of time. It would have been just a matter of time until those bolts had actually come loose, and then actually more catastrophic damage may have occurred, because if that fan came loose, it could have damaged the radiator and everything else. So one little step of precaution here while putting it together will minimize the chances of that in the future. All right guys, now for the tricky part. I've got to take this fan shroud and set it down in here very carefully. And then I have to get the fan in it and lower them down in together, because you can't get the fan in with the fan shroud in the way, and you can't get the fan shroud in with the fan in the way. They have to go down as assembly, so I'll need both hands. All right, as you can see, I got the fan and the shroud assembly in there. Luckily, there's this one stud right here on top that you can hang that fan shroud on. It keeps it from just falling all the way through. Now, nothing has been attached yet, so I still have to get in there and get that fan clutch started. All right, guys, it looks like I found a way to kind of wedge the camera up here. You can see what I'm doing. Now, one thing that I want to point out is that the first time I did this, I watched a few YouTube videos on how to get this fan clutch in and out. And there's stuff in there that tells you how to do it, but it doesn't really show you how much of a pain in the butt it actually is. So, figured I'll film this real quick and hopefully it'll work out. So I want to get that fan shroud back in there as far as possible. You know what? I almost forgot. I need to take these off. That way I get a little bit more wiggle room in the radiator. I just had these in finger tight. That'll give me just a little bit more flexibility with the radiator. Keep the wire out of the way, because believe it or not, that gives you just a little bit more room to be able to flex this back. So the hard part here is you actually have to physically hold the fan onto the water pump and then try and turn it till it starts. And it is not at all easy to do. Now, unlike some fan clutches, this one's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. On some model vehicles, the fan clutches will actually be reverse thread. So I'm trying to hold that clutch in the middle and actually spin the fan blade to get it started. All the while, I'll try to not damage the radiator. But there's just not much room in here to work. The difficult part is, I know I'm probably blocking the view, is that it's so hard to get your hands in here and spin it while keeping the fan assembly true up and down and side to side. But it looks like I got it. Yep, it is threading on. All right, let's change camera position. All right, so I don't know if you can see it all the way down in there or not. It's not focusing, but as I turn it, it is threading onto that water pump. Just keep spinning it on by hand until it tightens up. Now I gotta get the tools to actually tighten it. All right, so here we've got two tools. You need the 48mm clutch hub tool. And then this one here is just a holding tool to stop the water pump pulley from rotating while I do it. So at this point, what I'm going to do is pull this fan clutch back forward. That gives me room to get down there behind it. I'm going to get my 48mm end down there on the clutch hub. And then this tool, you got to grab the bolts on the water pump pulley and hold them steady while you tighten everything up. Double check it one more time, give it a good snug. From another position. And that's it. So now I'm going to push that inner fan shroud back into its place. There are 4 bolts that hold that back against the engine front. Then I can run the wiring to the fan clutch and finish the reassembly. All right, guys, I got all 4 bolts tightened up. Also, down at the bottom, you really can't see it, but where the lower radiator hose comes along the bottom of this fan shroud, there is a plastic like hoop that's wrapped around the hose, and it's got some push pin type style connectors that actually connect it to the bottom of this shroud. That way it keeps that from moving around. So that's all connected. So everything down underneath is now done. So now we're just going to route the wire up here, and you can see the groove right here in the fan shroud, and that is where this is supposed to go. I don't know if I can do it with one hand because there's a little bit of tension on it, so hold on a second. All right, so see there's a spot here that clips underneath, and this part's got to clip in the front. So I think you have to go over. All right, just like that. So there's a little kind of a crow's foot that's got a clip on the bottom, then it rotates in, and now that is nice and secure and away from the fan. And then the wiring just comes back up like so. You just simply plug it in. There, back to factory. Not a lot of clearance there. Ooh, and that fan clutch is definitely tighter than my old one was. All right, guys, so as far as repairing the actual problem, that's all fixed. All that's left now is to re-secure the radiator, put the outer fan shroud back in, replace the air filter housing, connect the radiator hose, and top our fluid back off. So let's get that done. Guys, I want to point out that on the fan shroud, on the bottom, there's an ear right there and an ear right there. And they just sit down in a channel down there below. I don't know if you can see it. It's not coming out real good on the camera, but there's a provision down there for them. And then once that's in, you've just got 2 bolts to go through the top of the fan shroud and into the radiator, into these speed clips, and that's it. That's all that holds it in there. Now you do have to fight to get it around hose, the upper radiator hose and the vent hose for the degas bottle, but once it's in there, it's just the 2 bolts that hold it in. As you can see there, got it all back together. She seems to be running pretty good. I'm gonna go inside and eat some lunch. And then when I'm done, I'm gonna go ahead and take it for a ride, try to get it hot and make sure that everything's working properly, but I have no reason to believe that it won't. So we're just gonna go ahead and do that, so stick around. All right guys, so I've been driving it around town, got about 40 miles on it now. Everything seems to be working good, so we're gonna call that project finished. Also, if you guys stay tuned tomorrow, might have a special surprise. I have to take Talon and Alyssa over to the airport in Chattanooga to pick up a rental car so they can go down and pick up our North American truck and get some more work done. And then after that, I think Katie and I are gonna head over to the semi-casual truck show. So there's some really nice truck show footage tomorrow if everything goes well. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. Until the next time I see you, you keep those engines running.